The International Atomic Energy Agency was established 54 years ago to promote the peaceful uses of nuclear power. Today, many are beginning to question the effectiveness of the agency, with allegations of bias and political influence. Has it outlived its usefulness in the post-Fukushima world? Has it learned from the lessons of Chernobyl 25 years ago? Can the IAEA continue to be entrusted with keeping us safe from the very real dangers of aging nuclear reactors when corporate profits and political considerations may be overriding public safety? The earthquake and subsequent tsunami that hit the coast of Japan in March 2011 caused the biggest nuclear disaster since the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the Ukraine 25 years earlier. Despite real concerns about nuclear safety, a more pragmatic view suggests that industrial development cannot be sustained without primary energy sources, of which nuclear energy is an important option. Alternative energy may still be an option, but much more investment would be needed to make it viable.
Nuclear energy still offers, in terms of really bang for buck over the long run, what you're paying outright to generate a kilowatt of electricity, is still one of the most efficient and stable means.
It's not necessary to be a prophet to predict what earlier or later the nuclear device will be exploded somewhere in the world. And the consequences was really apocalyptic. I am specialist under these things, and even I cannot fully describe the consequences. It's awful.
The IAEA is currently seeking a new mandate for improving global nuclear safety, for example, through additional inspections. According to another WikiLeaks document, the IAEA warned Japan in 2008 that its nuclear reactors were not designed to deal with more than a magnitude 7 earthquake. Japanese nuclear regulators, like those in many other countries, lack the power to force energy companies to spend the money needed to reduce risks to an acceptable level.
The agency actually has put lots of money, as well as the industry, in past couple of years to convince people that we need nuclear power, that nuclear power has learned its lessons, it has improved technologically, it's much more affordable, and it's a technology that many countries in the world should follow. I think that the Fukushima disaster again actually is an alarm bell to wake up our attention, because we can see total failure of IAEA and other national regulators.
If the IAEA would almost bounce all information that it gets immediately to the public sphere, it probably would have made a big difference in Japan.
The real problem is that nuclear energy companies can't make a profit if they take into account all of the costs of safety and decommissioning. There are 104 operating nuclear reactors in the US, of which 79% are more than 25 years old. Some of these older reactors, built in the 1970s, were licensed for only 40 years of operation. According to a CBS News report, radioactive leaks have since been found at 75% of US nuclear sites.
There are very large expenses associated with cleanup, with decommissioning. The United States is still working on cleanup in several of its reactors from the 1960s. So it is a problem. It, of course, depends on the type of reactor that was built. It depends on the size of the reactor. But you have to consider that there are other ancillary costs, and there are externalities associated with all choices that you make. For example, if you choose to decommission your nuclear power facilities and it's delivering, say, 5, 10, 15% of your electricity generation, you need to replace it with something.
Due to the high costs of repair or decommissioning, regulators have been persuaded by nuclear operating companies to relax safety standards, allowing aging systems to be operated beyond their intended maximum lifetime, apparently in pursuit of more profits. Not all shareholders are happy, however, with Merrill Lynch estimating that TEPCO, the Japanese company which runs the Fukushima plants, could face losses of up to $133 billion as a result of liabilities and cleanup costs.
They had neglected the existing plants. They have, right in that area where the 4 plants were damaged, there are other plants, by the way, that were not damaged, but they should be looking at fixing and making sure, fixing the problems in the rest of the plants, because earthquakes are unpredictable and they may be facing another disaster.
But of course, there is the whole package of final costs related to the rate waste management, decommissioning, and liabilities. And as you have said, the example of Fukushima shows that these costs could be extremely high, even beyond any capability of even the largest utility to pay the bill at the end.
Some analysts believe that the IAEA has failed to learn from the mistakes it made in the aftermath of the Chernobyl disaster. For example, the agency learned about the meltdown of Fukushima's reactor number 1 within hours of the event, yet withheld that information from the public for several weeks until the Japanese government officially revealed the facts.
By the way, the release of radioactivity in Fukushima is the same, is more significant than, say, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Everybody must understand it.
We have seen a very sad role of IAEA in covering up the full scale of the disaster of Chernobyl. We have seen IAEA now covering up the full scale of Fukushima disaster. And in that sense, IAEA shows again to public that actually they cannot be trusted because they have hidden interests in what they are saying, what they are doing.
In the early hours of a spring day in 1986, one of the world's worst nuclear disasters began during a routine test in nuclear reactor number 4. Technicians in the Chernobyl power plant in the former Soviet Union were running a test of the emergency cooling system, trying to improve overall safety in case of a shutdown.
In Russia, the operators were sentenced to jail, and they spent time in the jail in spite they were heavily irradiated. And certainly it was the very big crime from the crime of Russian government and administration. And this certainly was crime of International Atomic Energy Agency, who immediately agree with Russian proposals.
We've seen IAEA trying to improve safety principles. They talk a lot about better safety, but it's a matter of fact that they have never in one single situation actually ordered a reactor to be shut down. They even said before Chernobyl disaster that the type of reactor is safe. They were actually quite happy with the level of Japanese nuclear safety, and now we see the Fukushima disaster unfolding.
The fact is that the agency has been historically under enormous pressure by the nuclear lobby. There are companies that have an enormous interest and they lobby the agency. This is why the UN should take a look at whether this agency should have these multiple roles which are contradictory, because they are lobbied by major multinational corporations, some of whose market cap is larger than the GDP of entire countries. And the agency caves into these pressures.
Despite the very real concerns of the public about nuclear safety, the IAEA continues to promote nuclear energy. According to the agency, 20 new countries are expected to have nuclear power online by 2030. Hungary, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Belarus, Poland, Vietnam and Turkey are all actively planning to develop nuclear energy programs, with Iran becoming the latest member of nuclear energy nations when its Bushehr reactor goes online later this year.
The reality is very simple. Islamic Republic of Iran is master of nuclear technology, particularly enrichment technology. It has achieved great achievements, which have been, in fact, we're witnessing, have been during the almost 30 years of sanction. And the Iranian nation have paid a heavy price for it. The nuclear issue of Iran has turned into a national pride.
However, due to the IAEA's role as a nuclear non-proliferation watchdog, significant barriers have been placed in Iran's path towards its peaceful pursuit of nuclear energy, due to Western concerns about allegations of a nuclear weapons program.
Since my previous report on implementation of the NPT Safeguards Agreement and relevant provisions of Security Council resolutions in the Islamic Republic of Iran, the agency has received further information related to possible past or current undisclosed nuclear-related activities that seem to point to the existence of possible military dimensions to Iran's nuclear program. There are indications that certain of these activities may have continued until recently.
Of course, the IAEA is and has always been an advocate for nuclear energy. That's the reason why it was founded. That's the basic spirit behind this organization. It's there to propose and to spread nuclear energy. And as I said before, the basic facts are that we will need nuclear energy for at least the next 2 decades in many countries. So we might see probably slower progress, but we will see progress of nuclear energy. We will see new power plants. We will see new countries to open up for nuclear energy. We will see all of that. And Fukushima, in the long run, won't change that.
In 2010, a leaked official document published by WikiLeaks from the US mission to the IAEA showed that Yukiya Amano, current Director General of the IAEA, was, quote, solidly in the US court on every key strategic decision, from high-level personnel appointments to the handling of Iran's alleged nuclear weapons program. According to the UK Guardian, American diplomats privately described him as Director General of all states, but in agreement with us.
Well, the IAEA faces a major dilemma because its chief officers are, although they are international civil servants, are essentially backed by their governments. There is no high-ranking professional officer who is not. So it is a difficult endeavor for the IAEA to actually act on something, because no matter what it does, it's going to step on somebody's feet.
Furthermore, Amano was described as differing from his predecessor, Mohammed al-Baradei, in that Amano would stay away from a political role in relation to Iran's safeguards agreement.
I am dismayed by the allegations of some member states, which have been fed to the media, that information has been withheld from the board. These allegations are politically motivated and totally baseless. Such attempts to influence the work of the Secretariat and undermine its independence and objectivity are in violation of Article 7F of the IAEA Statute and should therefore cease forthwith.
In brief and in a nutshell, we believe that rights and obligation are side by side, and we are committed to both. Neither we will suspend our enrichment or activities, nor we will suspend our cooperation with IAEA.
The pressure on Iran includes EU travel restrictions on senior officials, and sources within the IAEA have confirmed that Iranian scientists have been denied access to some international meetings on nuclear safety due to concerns by other countries. We approached the IAEA for an interview, but they refused to provide any official comments.
There has been incredible animosity between the International Atomic Energy Agency and the United States government for, well, pretty much 5 administrations in a row. And it's been deteriorating, and it's gotten a little better now, particularly over the issue of Iran and of Syria.
IAEA, which is supposed and is seen by people to be a watchdog of nuclear industry, is actually rather a lapdog, because one of its mandates is to promote the nuclear power, and you cannot reasonably control something at the same time when we are supposed to promote it and expand it in the world.
Another country with alleged nuclear ambitions, Syria, suffered a major setback in 2007 when Israeli forces attacked an installation that they described as a Syrian nuclear facility. It was reported that several technicians from North Korea were killed in the attack, which was allegedly conducted with the knowledge and approval of the USA. The then IAEA Director General Mohammed El-Baradei criticized the raid, saying that to bomb first and ask questions later undermines the system and doesn't lead to any solution to any suspicion.
The idea of a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East has been brought up by President Obama soon after his election, and it has been brought up by other people. But of course we all know that this is an illusion. This is a very idealistic view of the matter, because Israel is a nuclear power. It has been a nuclear power for almost 3 decades now, and India and Pakistan wouldn't spend a thought about giving up on their nuclear arsenal. So, to me, the idea might be nice and idealistic, but in a way very far away from reality.
Now, why doesn't the agency touch Israel? Why doesn't it examine what Israel possesses, namely nuclear weapons that everyone knows it has? In fact, there has been criticism from within Israel. In other words, Israelis themselves have commented on this. While it doesn't say, well, it's very silent on Israel, it's basically targeting Syria and Iran.
Despite Syria's protests that no nuclear weapons program was in development, the IAEA voted in June 2011 to refer Syria to the UN Security Council as being in violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. The resolution expressed serious concern about Syria's lack of cooperation, highlighted Syria's history of concealing nuclear activities, and noted that the resulting absence of confidence that Syria's nuclear program is exclusively for peaceful purposes have given rise to concerns regarding the maintenance of international peace and security.
The agency has come to the conclusion that it is very likely that the building destroyed at the Deir al-Zur site was a nuclear reactor, which should have been declared to the agency. This is the best assessment of the agency based on all the information in its possession.
In response, Iran's ambassador to the IAEA, Ali Asghar Soltanieh, criticized the resolution, saying the agency faces a legitimacy crisis. Soltanieh added that there is a need to change the structure of the agency's board of governors. He said the important point is that we and independent states, especially the non-aligned movement, are trying to change the structure and the way of interaction of the agency.
I think that the agency has contradictory roles. It has those contradictory roles. It also, that you point out, and at the same time, it has the burden of being an agency that is really under the stronghold of the United States and the G7, G8, mostly G7 powers. It's really an agency that most of the world doesn't see as an independent agency.
Several non-aligned states feel that the IAEA has failed to treat all countries impartially. For example, according to a leaked briefing published in 1999 by the US Defense Intelligence Agency, Israel has between 60 and 80 nuclear weapons in active status. Israel, India and Pakistan are non-signatories of the NPT, unlike Iran, which continually maintains that its nuclear program is entirely for peaceful purposes. Yet it is Iran which seems to get the most attention from the IAEA, with a record number of inspections.
The agency has targeted Iran and Syria. It has targeted North Korea. The agency is on the one hand. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. The agency has targeted Iran and Syria. The agency is targeted North Korea. The agency is on the one hand. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the one hand, on the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Israel. On the other hand, the agency is doing nothing about Isra The fact is that for the agency to have credibility, it has to look even-handedly at the issue of nuclear weapons and the issue of enriched uranium, as it's constantly complaining about Iran. It has to look at that issue across the board.
Calls for reform of the IAEA are coming from many quarters. Greenpeace believes that the IAEA is failing in its role to protect the public from the unacceptable risks of nuclear accidents. Furthermore, it allegedly suppresses critical safety information and has prevented the World Health Organization from publishing information about the health of Ukrainian people after the Chernobyl disaster.
I think the UN should do a study and take another look at this agency. Maybe split it up. I would urge them to split it up.
We need to call for either a reform of IAEA from the very roots of its mandate and objectives, or we really need to get other expertise, get the national regulators to be put in charge of nuclear safety and be fully transparent with public participation to really make sure that there is not a conflict of interest between the promotion of the technology and attempts to control it.
I think this sort of thing is passé. And it's unfortunate that the United Nations has allowed the agency to lose some of its credibility.
The experience during the last almost 5 decades shows that the IAEA statute and IAEA Board of Governors structure is not in fact meeting the expectation of these years after decades, because this statute and also the procedures and structure of the Board of Governors was in fact written and designed during the Cold War. There are many developments. New members have joined the IAEA. Therefore, having 35 members with the structure of the designated members having permanent seat in the IAEA because of their so-called advancement in the region, while the other countries have also been advanced and joined this so-called nuclear club. Therefore, that would not work. We have, in fact, along with other countries, tried to amend the statute about 20 years ago, but regretfully, because of requirement of 2/3 ratification, we're still waiting the expansion of the Board of Governors.
The IAEA seems to be fundamentally flawed by its very construction. Originally created as an obscure bureaucratic group of technicians and analysts with a focus on promoting the peaceful uses of the atom, it has changed dramatically over the past 50 years. It now seems to follow mostly the dictates of its political masters, while trying to balance its mandate to police all aspects of civilian nuclear power within the budget limitations that fetter its ambitions. Clearly, the powers which hold the purse strings dictate the policies to be followed, and most nations are unwilling to cede the sovereignty required that would give the agency the teeth needed to enforce effective nuclear safety through mandatory inspections of declared facilities. Perhaps only drastic reform can help the agency to carry out its conflicting missions without losing all credibility in the process. Paul Gillingwater, Press TV, Vienna.